He received the United States' highest honor for valor on the battlefields of Vietnam. And many are hoping soon he will gain the highest honor of all, which is sainthood in the Catholic Church. We'll learn more about him tonight, so please stay with us. Thank you, and welcome. I'm Father Mitch Pacwa, and welcome to EWTN Live, where we bring you guests from all over the world. Before we get to our guests, I want to urge you, and I'll try to remember to do it later too, but urge you to please pray for all the folks in Texas and Louisiana. We're getting little bits of that hurricane, but it's nothing. They are really suffering, and more towns have become inundated. Let's pray for those who have lost their lives, oftentimes trying to protect others. And let's also pray for our country to be stirred to a generosity and a willingness to give of ourselves to help folks. They'll do their part, there's no doubt, but they also can use a lot of help. The devastation is amazing, and it's going to be very long lasting. So, and you can certainly donate to the aid effort through the Knights of Columbus, or I also think the bishops are going to be having a collection to help the people of Texas in this. So there'll be lots of need for a long time. Think about your extra clothes and lots of other things. People have lost everything. So keep them very much in your prayers and examine what you can do to help out. Now tonight we have 3 guests. They are all working together through different channels and different gifts to bring the story of Father Vincent Capodanno to a wider audience through the compilation of information and stories about his life and the presentation of those documents to the Vatican for consideration toward the cause of sainthood. Father Capodanno's spiritual legacy lives on, almost 50 years after his death. And later tonight, EWTN will premiere an original docudrama about his life. Just take a quick look at a clip from this.
I was on my second tour of Vietnam, but I knew that I might not make it back. So I wanted to get close to God and be ready. I noted that there was something different about him, the way he conducted himself.
He was just, for some reason, had kind of a little bit of a rock star quality. People just liked him.
When I met him, I knew there was something about this man that was extra special.
You could see it when he said Mass.
I had never seen a priest celebrate Mass the way he did. During Mass, he held the chalice up in the air, and I said to myself, God is here. God is here with us right now.
And I think that's the first time I saw him. Yeah, he was tall and lean, and I went up to take the Eucharist. Had a very kind but
the body of Christ.
Kind of a hardened look. I mean, he'd been out there. He'd been there before.
O Lord, hear my prayer. Grant us pardon, absolution, and remission of our sins. The Lord be with you and bring you to life everlasting. Amen. God has given us life that we should live it fully. God chooses minutes for respect.
you can watch this video called Called and Chosen. It'll be on tonight on EWTN at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Right now, please welcome to the set the Vice Postulator for the Cause of Father Vincent Capodanno, Mrs. Mary Preece, along with the Chairman of the Father Capodanno Guild, Mr. George Philips, and the writer and director of Called and Chosen, Mr. Jim Kelty. Welcome to you all. It's good to have you. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good to see you. Welcome, welcome. You know, it's kind of fancy titles that you get there, Vice Procurator. So what is the procurator and the vice procurator of a cause, so that people understand that, Mary?
Well, the postulator of the cause is in Rome right now. He's a canon lawyer.
Okay.
I basically am...
So even the saints have their own lawyers? Oh boy, the whole country's gone. So go ahead.
He knows the ins and outs of the canonization process. I am the intermediary between the Archdiocese for the Military Services, for whom I work on this cause, and him.
Okay.
However, I think perhaps the bulk of my work is interacting with our almost 1,400 supporters that belong to the Guild, Father Capodanno's. And so I try to make sure that they receive the materials and the information they ask, so that they are able to spread the good word as we are.
Now, with this, you work for do this vice postulator role for the Archdiocese of the Military. Explain what that is. A lot of people don't realize that the military has its own archdiocese.
It does, and it's an international archdiocese with no geographic boundaries, so to speak, because wherever our fighting men and women are, our military services, our academies, our veterans in the Veterans Administration hospitals, that's who we serve. And so we have an archbishop, and it is through that archdiocese that we have the competency or the responsibility for carrying on this canonization cause.
Okay, because most of the time, a canonization is something promoted by a diocese locally.
Right.
And because your archdiocese, where is your archbishop located?
We're located in Washington, D.C. That's
Okay.
where my office is.
Okay.
Typically, it is where the servant of God died that has competency primarily.
Right.
Obviously, with Father Capodanno's case, his dying in a communist nation, there was no interest there for them to pursue this.
No.
So we asked permission and received it from the Bishop of Da Nang.
Okay, so the Bishop of Da Nang in Vietnam.
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of, some of us remember these names and the maps and their locations very well as we followed the progress of the war in Vietnam, but today not so many people would
That's
know. Yeah. And you, Charlie, what exactly is your role here?
Well, as chairman of the Guild, I am responsible for the execution of the mission of the Guild. The Guild has two responsibilities.
Yes.
The first is to provide the funding for all the work that has to go in towards the canonization, all the research, all the document reviews, the salary of the postulator, all
What
travel
about the vice
expenses.
postulator?
She's my pal. We don't worry about it. So,
By the way, I called you Charlie as George. I'm sorry.
That's all right. I don't care. And that takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. But equally as important, and that's why we decided to do this DVD. We have to spread the good news of the life of this holy priest, this Navy chaplain who served with the Marine Corps and died with the Marine Corps, to the widest possible audience. And so in fulfilling those two missions, it keeps us pretty busy.
Now, you served in Vietnam in the Marine Corps, correct?
That's right, Father.
Yeah.
Yes. Served with my company 3-5, which is the company that Father Capodanno was with when he died on the 4th of September, 1967. I was there.
All right. So this is coming up to his 50th anniversary of his dying next week.
That's right. It doesn't seem like time goes by that fast, but it does.
You know, George, I don't know about you, but the older I get, the faster it seems to go.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think we're alone in that.
No, no.
These youngsters like Mary, they don't know. But we old timers do.
That's right, Paul.
And so were you with him in the, now, how did he die? What happened, the circumstances
Well,
of his
Mike
death?
3-5 walked into an NVA ambush.
What's the, remember, folks don't remember. So what's the
North
NVA?
Vietnamese Army.
Okay.
These are Army regulars, trained like regular Army troops. Very effective, very good with weapons, not like the Viet Cong, who were just a bunch of wannabes.
Yeah, the Viet Cong were civilians
Local.
mostly, and they were doing various attacks,
Right.
but they were not, you know, the disciplined, well-trained soldier of the North Vietnam Army.
Right. And the Viet Cong would never try to take on a Marine Corps battalion. You know, they just they just wouldn't do it. But the North Vietnamese Army was coming down the Ho Chi Minh Trail, moving through the Quaisans, getting ready for the Tet Offensive.
Okay, now again, remember, nobody remembers that except us old timers. So the Tet Offensive was
The final push by the North Vietnamese to try to drive the Americans out of the South.
right.
And anyway, in September, on the 4th, we were going to the aid of other Marine units that had already bumped into these 2,500 NVA. We walked up over a hill and we're starting down. First platoon was going down. I was with first platoon. And the point man yelled out, "I thought I saw a bush move." And the platoon sergeant yelled back, "If it moves again, shoot it." And it moved, he shot it, and then the whole world just opened up. Heavy machine gun fire, mortar rounds, snipers, and this continued for 9 hours.
And again, so folks understand, a point man is the
First
soldier or Marine at the very front of oftentimes a column.
Yeah, this was, we were in a wedge, but yes.
Right. Be a wedge, and he'd be at that point, and it's very risky, the most risky in some ways, position to be in. So he's the one who spotted the first movement, and the battle began.
Right, they're very well camouflaged, and that continued to be a problem throughout the day. They were very hard to see, but in the end, you know, they took their dead away, we took ours away. We had gone in with 178 Marines and one chaplain. At the end of the day, I think we had 17 or 18 dead, and 68 wounded out of 178.
That's a very serious battle. And again, a lot of times folks don't remember the history, but the Vietnamese army had fought against the Japanese, the Imperial Army of Japan. When they had come in, they fought against the French. And then there was a civil war between North and South Vietnam, and we increasingly in the 60s became involved with the South Vietnamese protection against the North. So I think we thought it would be exactly like Korea, you know, that to protect that South part that was still not communist.
Yes.
So, and it's not as if the communists there were so nice. as they were anywhere else. So it was a desperate fight for a lot of issues.
Especially at this point in time.
Yeah, yeah. Now, Jim, let me go to you. First of all, welcome back.
Oh,
it's good to have you back.
Good to be
You've
here.
done a number of these videos about very interesting people that otherwise are not quite so well known. Now, how did you get involved in this documentary on Father Capodanno?
Well, the last time I was on with you asked me what I wanted to do next, and I had been thinking about chaplains. It seemed like a really interesting ministry. A lot of courage involved, a lot of action and courage displayed. At the same time, one is being compassionate, and I thought it'd be a really interesting, and it was very ecumenical because they didn't sort between religions on the battlefield. It was whoever needed help, right? Yeah. And so all of that appealed to me a lot, and I'm very fortunate. Before coming on, I had contacted a priest who'd written the book that we all go by, called Grunt Padre, Father Daniel Mode, who's today a Navy chaplain, who wrote this very well-known book. And I contacted him, and he was, I believe, working with the Guild at that time to identify a producer. And he called me, he just told me a couple of weeks ago, I interviewed about 4 people and recommended you to the Guild. So the Guild, George called me one day in January of 2016, I think it was. I was laying in bed with 101 fever, I think. And I said, sure, we'd love to do it. And we'd already been thinking about it. And so I contacted EWTN because I've been working with them, and,
Sure.
and I liked the partnership. And so it was that's how it came together.
Now, a couple things to go back to you, Mary. What are some of the elements that you need to gather? What is it that you do specifically to organize this cause so that the procurator in Rome can move forward with it?
Well, I tried to help our historical commission gather as many things as they could about Father Capodanno's life. We have a tribunal who was responsible for garnering as many testimonies as they could of people who had known him personally. So because of my contacts through the Guild and people that I've met and talked to and written to, I was able to provide to that tribunal names of Marines, family, friends from Staten Island, anybody that might have and be willing to be interviewed to ascertain that Father Capodanno's life was a consistent one of virtue. So that has all been accomplished, that those documents have all been sent to Rome. The next step will be, once Father Capodanno is declared venerable, hopefully soon, then we will process through the beatification.
When you say that he'll be declared venerable, what exactly would that mean?
That would mean that Rome has gone through all those documents that we sent to them in May and has found nothing that would be a deterrent to the cause going forward.
Okay.
So it is not a step in the canonization process. It's a title given to somebody who has cleared a certain hurdle, if you will.
Yes.
And then the next stage would be beatification, which will require one miracle. However, we did get good news last month in which the Holy Father declared a new criterion by which someone might be considered for beatification.
And that is?
That the offering of a life, a free offering of a life, which Father Capodanno to me is the prototype for something.
Sure. So as you lay down your life, for instance, one of our Jesuit saints, a couple of our Jesuit saints, had gone in to help people with the plague, and they caught it themselves. So they laid down their lives for that, and in addition to everything else in their life. So that's would be an example.
Right. Along the way, we will exhume Father Capodanno's body from St. Peter's Cemetery, and because that's when that occurs at the beatification time frame. Okay. But right now, one of the things that we are most requesting is if someone has had an answered prayer to a significant illness or something that we can attribute to his intercession.
Yes, yes. We have a clip, based on, because you have to get a lot of this information, we have a little clip that I'd like to show from the documentary about his childhood based on some of this evidence. Let's take a look at it.
What a joy he was to them. And he was greatly loved by all his siblings and by his mom and dad. What a great time to be a boy for him.
Be strong and not afraid, for the Lord is with thee, whithersoever thou goest.
What?
It's from the Bible.
Oh, Bible, you!
God, please bless my family, Albert and Philip and Gloria and James and Dorothy and Eleanor and Pauline, especially Pauline and Mary.
Turn! We're gonna crash! To the left! Hey, stop!
And bless Mom and Pop too. Amen.
So did you get some of that information from his family?
Yes, actually, when Father Mode was assembling material for his book, there were more siblings alive. Mm-hmm. However, he does have a living sibling. His sister Gloria is still with us. Nieces and nephews who have vivid memories of him, and some of his distant cousins who are offered us many little vignettes of his life.
Sure, sure.
Classmates from his Staten Island high school. Some of the seminarians who were with him at Mary Knoll, of course, have wonderful memories, and particularly the Marines who really have given a consistent recollection of what a good and holy priest he was, as well as his heroic death.
Now, exactly what were the circumstances of his death? In that, because it was in the context of that battle, but we didn't talk about what happened to him.
There were a lot of wounded, a lot of dead, a lot of dying around. Father Capodanno, who had earlier in the day been wounded, lost some fingers off his right hand, and had wounds up his right arm and shoulder, where he really couldn't use his right arm very much. Father Capodanno that day, up on the top was a crater, what we call the knoll, and that was a bomb crater, and it provided some level of protection. Father Capodanno throughout the day would leave the safety of the crater, go down and help Marines, provide comfort, provide last rites. He told everybody, fear not, God is with us all this day. And we all became so familiar with that most of us remember it very vividly.
And that's the quote from the clip we just had. That's quoting from the scripture there.
That's right. So later in the day, maybe you lose track of time.
Sure.
When people are shooting at you all the time.
Yeah.
So about 3 or 4 hours, to my memory, others will say 2 hours, he saw some wounded Marines that were down towards the bottom of the hill. There was a wounded corpsman too. And he was running from person to person, providing what comfort and the sacraments as necessary to these Marines. A machine gunner had set up a nest very well camouflaged, and he had a firing channel that happened to separate some wounded Marines over here and some wounded Marines over here. The corpsman over here, who he tried to get to help, never got there. But the guys who were actually there, who saw him, because I did not see him die, are consistent in their story.
Yes.
That he was helping people on one side, and he was getting ready to go on the other side, and they were screaming at him, "Don't cross over." The machine gunners there, "Don't cross over," because 3 or 4 Marines already been wounded trying to cross over that firing channel.
Sure.
He didn't listen to anybody. He took off across the clearing, trying to get to 3 other Marines. The machine gun opened up and shot him 26 times in the back, 50 cal.
Yeah, 50 cal.
Yeah, makes big holes.
Yeah, 50 caliber is enough that can pierce armor.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so this is, you can't survive that.
No.
No.
But he never had any fear for himself, or
Yeah.
just a miraculous, amazing priest.
And he was posthumously awarded
The Congressional Medal of Honor in January of 69.
Yeah.
And that was very quick in coming, because a lot of times they can take several years.
No, sometimes decades.
Yes.
You know.
But there was never any doubt about his actions that day, and the things that are described in the film are the same things that he'd been doing for 18 months on his first tour with 1st Battalion, 7th Marines, and then with 5th Marines. So, I mean, this was a unique day, but in terms of combat, and what Father Capodanno would do as I described earlier, that's the way he did his mission, by helping his Marines, helping the corpsmen.
And Jim, I have just a couple minutes or so, but as you've done that, you've obviously listened carefully to these stories. You can't do a documentary without careful listening and attentiveness. What do you draw for yourself as someone who's become very intimate as an observer of Father Capodanno's life? What have you drawn from this?
My understanding of him, you mean?
Yeah.
What I get from everybody I interviewed, all the Marines, I got a sense of a great listener, somebody who really drew you in. They all said that in one way or another, that he drew you in without any kind of fanfare or any kind of, manipulation or anything. He was just somebody that you drew you to him, and you wanted to unburden yourself. And he never ever, from what I understood from these fellows, that he never ever said no. He never turned anyone away, and he was always available to everybody. Sure. That's what I got about him.
Yeah, so it's the generosity then was something that was well established as a way of living.
Yeah. And
a heroic and generous death is just part and parcel of
I mean, somebody
whole
from
life.
a big family like that, I'm from a big family. So, I mean, you're always, there's always something going on, and there's somebody to listen to, and sometimes you can get lost in the shuffle, but sometimes you're observing, and I think he was probably learned to be a great listener and to fit in by virtue of being from a big family, possibly.
I don't know how much.
Yeah, go ahead.
People, the Marines will tell you, and it happened to me personally on several occasions. When you talk to Father Capodanno, his eyes just kind of sucked you right in. But when you were standing close to him, either in a group but one-on-one, it was like everything had stopped. There was no noise, there were no rockets, there were no helicopters coming in and out. And he had an innate ability to listen, as Jim said. But he also had an innate ability to know when Marines needed to talk about something. And he would sit and wait in silence until the Marine decided to talk. I mean, it was, I saw it over and over again.
Sure. So that there's not only the generosity, but also a kind of sense of God's presence with him, and a wisdom that came from him as well.
Yeah.
We have to take a little break, but if you want to find out more, you can go to the Father Capodanno Guild, and it's capodannoguild.org, capodannoguild.org. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. We want to get your questions and comments, as well as those of our studio audience, so please stay with us. Thank you and welcome back. We're going to go right to calls because we're getting lots of them. So let's start off with Leo. Leo, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Maryland, Albany, Maryland.
Okay, good. And your question or comment?
Well, the comment that I had is, something that what George was talking about, about, any time that you were around Father Capodanno. I was raised Catholic, and he was just completely different than anybody that I
so
had
you
met.
knew Father Capodanno?
He was a
That's right.
corpsman with
Yeah.
1-7.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so you're a Navy corpsman. All right, so,
I
just
was
wanted to make
Navy
sure I
corpsman,
understood.
right. And he would come in to our combat base and say Mass there. We would see him from time to time in the field as well, but he always was going wherever the action was the most difficult. And the thing specifically that he did for me, because I wanted to emphasize that when I was getting an interview, I had learned that, all people react to combat differently. And I would see the rest of the guys in my company and some of the other corpsmen in my company where it just didn't seem to bother them at all, but it really did me. And I was there in combat for about 4 months, and we ended up on an operation that went almost 31 days. And I was really struggling with it. My senior corpsman sent me back to talk to a psychiatrist at a aid station. I talked to him once, came back to the line company, really struggled also physically, getting sick before I would have to go out on patrol, stuff like that. So after about a month of that, they sent me back again, and this time the psychiatrist said, well, basically everybody has a tolerance. You've done the best you can. You're done. We're going to send you home. And that was something that I couldn't do. I knew I could not do that because I felt like I was deserting my Marines and the other corpsmen that were in that company. And they had sent me up to, at this point, to 1st Medical Battalion in Da Nang, and I was there, and I ran into Father Capodanno while I was there. So I told him I needed to speak to him. We went out, and I had talked to him before, so it wasn't like we didn't know each other. And I told him the situation, which was the same thing I said on the show, that if I go home this way, if I go home like this, I'm not going to survive. I'll just become a statistic. And he calmed me down and said, let me see what I can do. And I told him I told him that I was good at what I did, and I wanted to work in the difficult spot at Med Battalion, which was the intensive care unit. And it couldn't have been much more than a week, because I already had orders cut to send me back home. And he got me that job, and that's why I say there's no doubt in my mind he saved my life. Because if I had come home that way, I could not have lived with myself.
Leo, I think you mentioned that you were interviewed for this, so that they've got the clip from the video. Let's take a look at it.
I mean, he loved the Marines. He really did. He cared about people. And he was totally fearless.
An enlisted medical specialist, or corpsman, Leo Rosetta served with Father Vincent in the 1st Medical Battalion. He'd heard of this chaplain risking his life countless times on the battlefield, and now he was about to meet him firsthand. But several vicious engagements had left Corpsman Rosetta badly shaken, and they were about to send him home.
He sent me up to 1st Med Battalion. Well, Father Capodanno showed up.
Son, how you doing?
Hey.
Want a cigarette?
Cigarette. Good.
You've seen some things, huh?
You ever been out with the Marines?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
How come you're chaplain? You don't have to go. You're chaplain.
No, I don't.
Why you go? You don't have to go.
The same reason that you go, Doc. Same reason.
Look, I'm not right in the head. I know I'm not right in the head, but I go out and they're my boys. And I'm the doc. I'm their doc. I go out. I take their bodies back and drag them back. I can't do anymore. I'm not right in the head, and they want to send me home. And I want to be at the 1st Med. If I could just be back here with
okay.
the 1st Med,
All right. I'll see what I can do. All right. Get some sleep.
So he did, and got me in the surgical intensive care unit, and he got me there. And I finished my tour. I finished it all the way out. And I know for a fact that I would have just been a statistic had he not done that.
Leo, we don't have too much more time, but does that bring that all back to you then?
Like it was yesterday. I remember exactly where we were at the Med Battalion, exactly the time we spent together. And it changed my life for sure.
See, that's one of the reasons that somebody like Father Capodanno is up for, this cause, that kind of effect and impact on people that come because of his own giving of himself and his wisdom to know how to, the Bible's so clear that wisdom is a gift from God. And because of his closeness to God, he had that wisdom. I have a question from our studio audience. Sir, where are you from?
Snellville, Georgia.
Good to have you here. And your question?
Yes, I'd like to know the number of events and/or the amount of time necessary to advance the cause.
And you mean the cause for his canonization?
Venerable.
Yes.
Okay. There are three major phases in the canonization cause, and we're at the first one right now. But when you talk about events,
I mean, it's like a number of miracles.
Oh, I see. One miracle is necessary for beatification, and another one is necessary for canonization. And so we are in the process of researching some of the things that have come into me regarding a possible miracle. So we're going to continue to research those and hope that more will come, because that would be a real boost to the cause.
And something about the timing of miracles, we can't quite organize that.
That's right.
The miraculous is a management issue, and God is management.
Correct.
We're in sales. But and the reason for the miracles is to show that God is blessing this. And a miracle is not just, oh, I was in Manhattan and I found a parking place. No, that doesn't count.
No.
No. You have to be something that's clearly beyond nature. As amazing as that would be to find a parking space in Manhattan, that doesn't count.
Typically, it's a remarkable recovery from a a death type of situation,
Yes,
you know, or
yeah.
and it shows that that person is in heaven with God if through his intercession, his
Right.
prayers are being taken.
Like it says in Scripture, God doesn't answer the prayer of the unrighteous. So let's go to another. We have Henry online. Hello, Henry.
Hello.
Hi, where are you from?
San Antonio, Texas.
San Antonio, Texas. And your question or comment?
Well, I remember Leo, and but you know, my most.
Oh, so you were also involved.
He was in.
Yes.
Henry,
well, you know, I used to tag along with Father Capodanno, or the Padre, and when the Marines wanted to talk to him in private, I would move away.
Okay, all right.
Have a private talk.
All right. So you were Father Capodanno's chaplain assistant.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And you know, when I first took the job, I didn't know what I was getting into, and finally, I realized what the job was ahead of me, and there was a lot of pressure on me, being a corporal, E4, and the battalion commander or the sergeant major, the first sergeant, would constantly remind me to protect the Padre when we used to go out in the field. And then they would get after me because he would be where he wasn't supposed to be. And I would say, I'm just a Corporal E4. If he doesn't listen to you, why should he listen to me? But all he told me was, I'm doing Scott's work. The Marines need me, and I have to be where they are.
Yeah.
And like Leo, you know, not only did he save my life, but most important, he saved my soul.
Yeah.
He brought me back to the church.
Oh, wonderful. So folks understand, you know, chaplains do not carry firearms.
No.
So they're not part of the combat.
No.
And they can't even defend themselves.
That's correct. Yes. So that was my main priority was his safety when I was out in the field. You know, when we were out on an operation, that was my main concern, his safety.
Okay. Okay. And his main concern was your soul.
Yes. Yes. And not only mine, but all the Marines. I used to refer to him as the magnet because he would draw you in. I mean, even though you didn't want to talk, you didn't want to talk about what was bothering you. When he got close to you, he just drew you in, and he wouldn't say anything. And then all of a sudden, the Marines would just open up to him. And I used to say that he had hazel piercing eyes because he could see through you. When I first went to confession with him on my second tour, I knew that I wasn't going to make it out. So I wanted to prepare myself.
Sure.
Ready.
Sure.
And he told me, do you need help with your confession? I said, yes, Father, I do. And to this day, that's the best confession that I had ever made.
Cool. That's also been the case of a number of really holy priests that, you know, like Padre Pio and others. They can, you know, have an insight. The Cure d'Ars is another one. They have an insight into the other person. They don't know the person, and yet they can sort of read what's going on inside them and say it in such a way as to help them. It's not an accusation, you didn't tell me this, you dirty liar. No, it's something that helps evoke deeper conversion. Yeah. You're going to add to that?
His discernment as George was saying, about knowing when Marines needed his compassion, his assistance, whatever, he was often told that he radiated Christ to the Marines because of his ability to be one with them.
Yes. Yeah. Cool. Young lady, where are you from?
I'm from Birmingham.
And your question?
Well, I guess to build off what we've already heard, we've heard that Father Capodanno kind of helped these Marines get through the war. Have you heard from other people that they really helped either grow their faith or be able to keep it afterwards?
Well, sure. The two gentlemen that called in, they're friends of mine. And we have Mike 3-5. We have annual reunions, and I haven't gone to them all, but I remember the first one I went to, and a bunch of us started talking about Father Capodanno. And I would say almost to a man, anybody who met him, anybody who met him or had contact with him, they've never forgotten that contact. I've met a lot of priests. My wife and I, our family, have been very blessed. Every place we went in the military, and since, we've always had good parish priests. But right now I couldn't remember all their names. But Father Capodanno, you can't forget a man like that. It's just impossible, because nobody is ever going to have an effect on you the way he did. And the Marines and sailors that worked with him will tell you that to a man.
Yeah, yeah. You know, it's something interesting that of all the chaplains who have gotten the Congressional Medal of Honor, the majority of them are actually Catholic priests.
Yep.
And this has in some ways been understood as one of the fruits of our celibacy. That, you know, a lot of, most of the other ministers would be married, and they would have a responsibility to think about their children and their wives like everybody else would. But there's a certain kind of almost recklessness by priests who say, oh, I don't have to worry about my wife or kids, and they'll go into combat with a different, without that one set of concerns, and become a lot of courageous chaplains all over the world. Right. It's just that Catholic priests have been the group that's received the largest number of congressional medals.
Exactly right. The other thing, for the people who view the DVD, he influenced other chaplains the same way he influenced Marines.
Sure.
We have a clip from Father Krulak, who was there with Father Capodanno at the battalion and at the regiment, and he tells a story how Father Capodanno became like his mentor.
He's an Episcopal priest.
Episcopal priest. And I know Eli Takesian, now dead, used to be, but he was the division chaplain, and I knew him years later, and he had the same kind of memories of Father Capodanno. So it was not just the young Marines and the corpsmen, it was his contemporaries and those senior to him that he also had that effect on, which was unusual.
And it continues, because he is affecting many young people who are considering the vocation of priesthood or to enter a convent or something, and they attribute their vocation to Father Capodanno.
Wow. Cool.
So that influence persists.
And maybe that influence will also be on some young men who might be thinking about the chaplaincy as...
Exactly.
Because there certainly is a big need for Catholic chaplains.
For sure.
Yes. We have another call. We have Damian Ferreira, who played the young Vincent Capodanno. Damian, are you there?
Hello.
Hello, Damian. You were the actor, right?
Yes.
And you played Father Capodanno when he was a little boy?
Yes, I was very honored to play him.
You were very young.
Honored.
Oh, honored. I thought you said you were very young. I'm very old. I get hearing. Yeah. When you say you're honored, were there some things that you learned from, working on the film and trying to understand Father Capodanno?
Yes, I learned a lot about acting, and I actually didn't know about the saint until I met Mr. Kelty.
Uh-huh.
So, and then we got the book, The Grunt Padre, by Father Mode.
Yes.
And my mom started reading that to us. And then during the film production, I listened to the audiobook, so I learned a lot more in the book about Father Capodanno.
Oh, great. Well, that's good. Well, thank you for taking part in the film, Damien. We appreciate that and being part of that. We have another call. We have Steve Lovejoy, who was a radio operator.
One of our guys.
Pardon?
Mike 3-5.
Oh, is that right? Yeah. But when you keep saying you're 3-5, what do you mean you're 3-5?
3rd Battalion, 5th Marines.
Okay. See, we got to break down the language here, Marine.
Yeah.
All right. So, Steve?
Hello.
Hi. You also have memories of Father Capodanno.
Yes, I do. He literally saved my life on September 4th, 1967, by helping me up the knoll to a safe position in a bomb crater. Had he not been there, I would not be here today. My children would not be here. My grandchildren would not be here. So I have talked about him over the years and always thought many good thoughts about him. One thing I'd like to say real quick is a big thanks to the cast and crew. Many times when we were filming the combat scenes, they told me that they thought this was something they really wanted to get right because it was an important story about an important person, and it was a true story. So they felt like it was something they really wanted to strive to get it right. And what I'd like to say about Father Capodanno is that over the years, I always believed that Father Capodanno had been with my company for maybe 3 or 4 months, but actually in reality, he'd only been with us for 3 or 4 weeks. And he had that kind of impact on people. He treated us as if he was one of us, we were one of him, we were the same. And that's how we related to him. But of course, we did have respect and we understood his position, but he was accepted as a Marine. And that is why he is called the Grunt Padre. Grunt is the word used for an infantryman that grunts and groans as they're going through the bush. So that's where that came from.
And so he's, and even though he was not actually a Marine, he was in the Navy, correct?
Right.
A naval officer and chaplain. But he was, again, because of his commitment to the guys, to the grunts that are out there in those really dangerous situations. It's hard to communicate what it's like to be in the middle of combat. Yeah. It's not like movies.
So, and the other thing I think, and Steve, you can correct me if I get this not quite right, but the chaplains, for 99% of them, did not go outside the base camps.
Mm-hmm.
So when we started hearing about a chaplain that was out with the grunts, going on patrols, mm-hmm. getting caught up in firefights and mm-hmm. things like that, that was a unique experience for a lot of us.
Sure. Well, we're going to show this EWTN original docudrama. The name of it is Called and Chosen, Father Vincent R. Capodanno. It airs tonight at 10 p.m. on EWTN Eastern Time. You can also get a copy for yourself at EWTN's religious catalog. You go to EWTNRC.com or call as well, and you find out more about him. If you're in Washington, you might want to also make it over to the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception. There's an annual Mass for Father Vincent Capodanno on Tuesday, September 5th at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time in the Crypt Mass Church. And the Mass will be celebrated by Archbishop Timothy Broglio of the Archdiocese of the Military. I want to thank you all very much. We've run flat out of time. Okay. And thank you for what you're doing and making this known. And may Almighty God bless all of you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And, you know, we can present this great story and so these other programs because the network is brought to you by you. So please keep us in between your gas bill, your electric bill, and your cable bill, because we do have to keep on paying our bills too. Thank you all, and God bless.